Hey, so today I'm recreating a tone from the Roadrunner United record. I think this is probably one of my favorite guitar tones, and it's one of the Rob Flynn songs with Max Cavalera on vocals. And the midsection of this song, where it breaks down to a kind of slower riff, the chunky chugging riff, such a satisfying guitar tone. So I figured today I'm going to try and replicate it using my STL Tonality plugin. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know that I'm now on Patreon. So if you want to see more content like this, or you want to keep supporting me in making more music, then please consider joining. There's various different tiers and various different perks to each tier, and some behind the scenes content that I'll only be posting to Patreon as well. So let's listen to the guitars on their own. So these guitars are quad-tracked. A few things I gathered: that Rob Flynn usually uses the green channel on his 5150 block letter. Usually uses, or at least back then was using, a Marshall 1960 B cab with vintage 30 speakers. Colin Richardson mixed this. Usually when a mix engineer agrees to do a mix, they'll usually make some requests before the recording process if they're involved early on. And he'd probably always request some 421 mics on the cabs, I'm assuming, because I know he likes those. So with that information that I've kind of gathered, I've deduced that those would be the ingredients that we're going to look at. So let's load up my plugin now. I'm going to turn off the EQ that I've got on the guitar bus and the multi-band compressor, and let's just listen to one of those guitars. So here are the amp settings. So on the rhythm channel, the bright switch is engaged as well. These are the settings I'm using. It kind of saturates in a thicker way on the green channel. These are the settings: boosting a little bit more signal because it's the green channel, there's not as much gain. A little bit more high end being boosted because there's not as much low and high pass filtering on the front end, I think, on the green channel compared to the red channel. So that's why I'm using those settings there, specifically on the tone, which I don't normally go that high on. And then amp settings, and this is the cab. Actually, for once, using more 41 microphone on this speaker, the top right vintage 30 in the Marshall, more of the 41 than we're using of the 57. Very different microphones, but it's the exact same speaker, but you can hear the drastic difference there. The 41's a lot more scooped. Got a bit of a thicker low end. So for this one, the guitars are quad-tracked, all the same tone, which I think would have been the case on the actual recording, on the record. I don't know that for certain, but I'm going to guess that's probably what happened. And then let's engage the EQ. In fact, I'm going to turn it on and off, and you guys can hear the difference in what the EQ is doing. So the first thing I can hear is there's a whistle that I've obviously notched, so let's take a look. Yep, and that'll be this one around the 3K area. So when trying to replicate a guitar tone exactly, it's impossible. First thing is the player and their picking. Another thing I know about Rob Flynn is that he holds the pick, I think, with his middle finger, like that, and his index finger's loose. And I've tried doing that, and it actually did give a different sound. Sounded a bit brighter, and my palm muting is obviously in a different spot. So for like palm mutes, just sounded different. So you'll never be able to replicate the tone exactly if you don't have the player. And the other thing that is super crucial is every single speaker is different. Even if you get two speakers off the consecutive like conveyor belt in a factory of speakers, they'll sound different. They just all do, specifically in the high end. They'll all share like pretty much the same sound, but in terms of the differences we're going to hear in the top end, they're all different. So without having the exact speaker, you can never replicate exactly. And you can get quite detailed in trying to notch out an EQ match exactly, but the more you start doing weird things like notching and boosting things very specifically in small areas, it just starts to sound a bit weird. So I've gone for more broad moves apart from this one, these two notches, really here and here. So this is where the high end of the guitar is really cutting through the mix. It's usually pretty good to boost like a wide boost where you're notching so things don't get too weird. I'm boosting some high end here, which doesn't do a lot in the mix context because there's not a lot of high end information in this area anyway, so boosting it that much doesn't actually do a lot if you listen now. It just gives some life to the guitars, they just don't sound quite as dull. It's really common for people in modern metal to kind of low and high pass their guitars quite a lot and they just sound really dull and lifeless and not very exciting. So actually keeping some of this high end in or boosting some of it really helps. And loads of the records with guitar tones that I like, when I've ever done EQ matches, there's always tons of high end there that I never would have thought you'd boost, but I think that's what has been happening here in the mix. I've also seen on like a forum post from years ago that Colin Richardson would boost 10k for some sizzle and some life to the guitars. And yeah, a little bit of mid cut there. This is like the palm mute area, dynamic EQ, and a bit of a low end boost because the Marshall in particular, those cabs don't have quite as much low end, so I'm just doing a bit of a boost there. And that is it.